Very good morning, plumbers. We're going to enjoy hopefully a good session this morning. But before we start with our discussion, I was asked just to review the tips to continually prevent COVID-19. Now, there's 6 points covered here. And the first protocol is that you must always wear a mask when out in the public. Secondly, wash your hands with soap or an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Thirdly, avoid touching your eyes, your nose, or mouth with unwashed hands. And then fourthly, avoid close contact with people who are sick. And cover your cough or sneeze with a flex elbow or a tissue, then throw it away in a bin. And lastly, clean and disinfect frequently used surfaces and objects. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is may sound strange that this is mentioned, but this is a protocol that needs to be adhered to. We all know the consequences. I believe this morning I listened to the radio in the last, I think, 24-hour period. There were recorded another 520 deaths, over 17,000 new infections. So it's no child's play. This is serious. And for that reason, our officer is always also aware of the situation, and being members, you are then helped to appreciate the seriousness of this whole situation. Right, so let us now go into this morning's discussion. We are going to discuss why use a pressure gauge as a plumber. What is the reason for that? I find in my training that I do that many plumbers do not understand why it's necessary, but it's very, very important. I personally believe that the plumber cannot do his job properly unless he's got a pressure gauge and know how to use it in his day-to-day activities. So what is a pressure gauge? It is a measuring instrument designed to measure the static water pressure on site. Very important. When a designer must do a design for a water reticulation system, a pressure gauge is an absolute necessity, because one of the very basic things that the designer needs to know is the static pressure on that site where the installation is going to be done eventually. Now, water pressure is determined by the vertical height of the water source. In other words, the reservoir supplied by the municipality, wherever that might be. So it's not the volume of water in that reservoir, it's the vertical height. And that is measured, and you can use the rule of thumb that for every 1 meter rise from ground level, 1 meter height represents 10 kilopascals. So on that basis, you can understand, but we'll discuss that a little bit further later on. So how is static pressure measured on a site? First of all, you need to have, as I've said, a pressure gauge. And then you are going to attach that gauge by using the little connectors that is normally with a gauge in a little box or a little bag or whatever. And you're going to attach that to a garden tap. You open the tap, and then you are going to see that there's going to be a reading. Now, these gauges can vary from 100 kPa to 2,500 kPa. The more common ones that is used in the market is the 1,600 kPa gauges, but some companies also sell the 2,500 one. So the reading that you will see that's indicated on that gauge is going to be your static pressure. Now, that means there's a condition of no flow. There's no flow of any water on that site. In other words, when you are going to measure that, you have to see that there is not a washing machine or a dishwasher or any other tap open on site, because you want the water to be in a static condition. In other words, a condition of no flow. Now, it's quite interesting if we go to Science 10254, 2017, and we look under section 4.32, pressure rating of the system. And I'm just going to read this. You know this, but I'm just going to read this quickly. The rated pressure of the system shall not exceed a static pressure of 600 kilopascals. And that's also, it's noted in 10254, but it's also obviously discussed in Science 10252, part 1. And the pressure control valves and expansion control valves used in the system shall have the same pressure rating. This pressure rating may be less than the rated pressure of the storage water heater, but shall never exceed it. Now, guys, all it says there is that if you use a system or a valve, pressure control valve, which incorporates a pressure relief valve, obviously it's got to be the same. If you have a separate pressure control valve and a separate expansion control valve, the rating of those two must also be the same. But it is actually determined by the rating of the geyser that you're going to use and what rating of pressure control valve you're going to use. Now, the 600 kPa, that is for the system. So just keep that in mind. So if you've got 1,000 kPa incoming pressure from the mains, obviously it's got to be reduced to a maximum of 600. And the 600 has to do with the expansion process that's going to take place eventually when the water is heated. So if you have a 600 kPa valve, 600 kPa geyser, the regulations says that the pressure must be reduced to a maximum of 510 kPa. So that cushion between 510 and 600 is your expansion cushion when the actual process of heating is taking place. Now, the other point I just want to make is that TP valve and the drain valve are integral parts of a storage water heater and are supplied with the fitted storage water heater as required. Now, that requirement is also noted in SANS 151. Now, the next point is that the various components of the system shall be so installed that the hot and cold water delivery pressure at your mixing points are balanced. In other words, you have equal pressure on both sides. Now, you may find that you're going to have draw-off points on either the hot or the cold line, and that variance of the residual dynamic pressure at the fittings shall not vary by more than 20%. Now, that is achieved by the proper pipe sizing. So that is where your designer is going to come in, and he's got to see that the pipe sizes are proper. So if the supply pressure could exceed 600 kPa in general or combined installations, a pressure reducing or pressure control valve must be incorporated, like I've said now. That's just a little introduction to that story there. Now, why use it and in what manner is it going to assist you as the plumber? In practice, you're going to get a call from a homeowner. They're going to say to you that there's constant water flowing from a pipe. They normally don't know which pipe it is. If you are lucky, you can ask them, do you know more or less the size of that pipe where the water is coming from? They will say to you, yeah, no, there's a big pipe, looks like a 50 millimeter PVC pipe. You hope that's going to happen, you see. Then there's another one, it looks like a 22 millimeter metal pipe, okay? And then there's a little 15 millimeter pipe. And then you say to them, okay, fine, where does the water come from? And they say, no, from that 15 millimeter pipe. Now, guys, if that's the case, you are a very fortunate plumber, because then you know what to do. So it's not a drip, it's a constant flow. And the concern of the homeowner is that this is a major water wastage, which you have to agree with. You can't argue with a guy. So this is when the use of your pressure gauge is going to save your company time and possible money in terms of expenses. I'm talking about you as the plumber and your plumbing company. So let us discuss this little scenario of referred to here. Now, this picture is a picture of a typical pressure gauge set. You get them in different configurations, but this is a basic thing. You've got a little gauge, then you've got these adapters. You can see there's one adapter already fitted onto the gauge. And then you've got, on the right-hand side, there's normally an electrical continuity little meter, and then that is not in here. There should be or there can be a thermometer as well in this little box, but that is not the issue at this stage. The issue is that there is a gauge. You can see this gauge depicts a pressure rating of 1,600 kPa maximum. So let us take this geyser installation here. So remember, the complaint was that there's water running from this pipe. You've established it's now the half-inch pipe or the 50 millimeter pipe, and now you're going to now analyze the situation. You make an appointment. You say to Mrs. Jones, I'll be there at 11 o'clock. Meet me at your gate because I know you've got a big dog, most probably. You get there. When you get out of your bakkie, you're not going to take a ladder with you. You're not going to take a toolbox with you. You take your gauge with you. And you're going to most probably have a small spanner with you, a shifting spanner with you. Now, I'll explain that, why I say that. I'm going to sketch this scenario for you now. When you go there, you say to Mrs. Jones, ma'am, I just want to see where's that pipe that you're talking about. Go around the house, you see, yep, 3 pipes, 50 millimeter, 22, 15, you see the water gushing out. I said, okay, fine. Thank you very much. Where's the garden tap? Is there a garden tap close by? Yes, there it is. So you go there, took out the 3/4 inch BSP threaded adapter, screw it onto the garden tap, screw in the gauge into that, and you open that tap relatively slowly. You don't want to mess up your gauge. So you are going to slowly open it. You're going to see the gauge is going to go up. If it stops, say for instance now at 900 kPa, okay, can go up to 1600, but it stops at 900 kPa. Then you know that that pressure is 900 kPa. Obviously, that stands to reason. Then you say to a man, I just want to go inside your house. I need to see what the pressure rating is on the inside. Can you please go with me? Yes. You also ask her whether there's any open taps inside, if there's any washing machines, anything like that. No, everything is fine. Then you know your static pressure is 900 kPa. You go inside the kitchen with her. You see there's a mixer. You undo the aerator on the mixer, on the spout. You screw in a 50 millimeter or a half-inch fine thread adapter on there. Again, your gauge on there, and you open up that tap on the right-hand side. Obviously, you expect the right-hand side to be the cold water side, which it should be. So you open it up, and as you open it up, you see that gauge is going to go whoops up to 900 kPa. Now you know that you are actually working here with an unbalanced pressure system, because the pressure outside and the pressure inside the house is equal. Now you want to find out, without going into the roof, what type of valve is going to be in the roof, because you see here, and there's no doubt about it, that this is unbalanced, and there is a pressure control valve installed at the geyser. And you can, from this now, deduct there's going to be a problem. So you reduce the pressure, you close the handle, go to the left-hand side, open it up, and guess what happens? Your pressure reading on your gauge stops at 340 kPa, 340. So what do you know about the system? You know that there's a 400 kPa pressure control valve at the geyser. You know now that the pressure on the cold lines, even inside the house, is higher than the hot water pressure from the geyser. So it's unbalanced. Now, you've got to prove now to this lady what is going on here, because you would like to explain to her why that water is running from that valve. So what you do, you say to her, ma'am, I'm going to open up the little doors of your cabinet at the bottom here. And if you are, once again, a fortunate plumber, you're going to see at the bottom, inside the cabinet, there are 2 angle valves. The one on the right-hand side, obviously, is the cold water to the mixer. And it's, we assume now it's a single lever mixer. Well, we have said so. And there's a cartridge going to be inside. So you close the angle valve on the right-hand side, feeding the cold port of that mixer. You close it, not the outside, the one on the right side, the cold one. And you say to a man, please come with me. I want to just go outside and show you something. You walk out with her to that same pipe that you saw earlier. And when you get there, the water flow nearly stopped. She says, what have you done? You said, I'm trying to fix the situation. So you go back. Now, what has happened here is that the cold high pressure, or the pressure on the cold side, which is 900 kPa, over time, pushed right through that cartridge in that mixer. We know that these cartridges don't like to handle anything above 400. This is 900, and over time, sediment and pieces of little grit came into that cartridge, and with this movement of opening and closing, small little grooves were cut into that mixer. So in other words, what happened here is that, remember now, your hot water pressure inside the geyser, maximum 340, and 900 coming in. So that cold water pressure has pushed right through that mixer, through the cartridge, and overpowered the hot water side through the mixer to the geyser, and actually pushed up against the hot water line into the geyser, right through the geyser, overpowering the incoming pressure of 340, and manifest as a flow through your expansion relief valve. So guys, that process that is happening there is referred to, as you know, as back pressure. So now you must stop that story. How are you going to do that? Well, you're going to do it by balancing the system. Now you are going now to tell Mrs. Jones that that needs to be done, but obviously it's going to cost money. So you have to balance the pressure as such. There's ways of doing it. The easiest, most probably in this case, would be to buy one of these boxes from the manufacturers. They call it, some call it a mono box, and some other boxes, whatever it might be. They contain a shuttle valve, they contain a line strainer and a valve. Install that thing outside where the water enters the house or the building, and voila, you should have a balanced pressure. The only problem is that you must be very careful not to create any anticipation as far as that's concerned, because in the old house, you never know what the quality of the pipes are on the inside. But statically, you are going to now have the same pressure on the hot and the cold side. So she's going to tell you, ma'am, sir, I'm a widow. I cannot afford to do it now. Can you do it for me at the end of the month? Yes, ma'am, I can do that. So in the interim, what you can do, you can install a non-return valve, spring-loaded on the hot line at the geyser, but not in between the outlet of the geyser and the vacuum breaker. In other words, where the water goes out. In other words, upstream. You're going to then install a non-return valve. There's some companies who insist on doing that, working for the insurance companies. So there's nothing wrong with that on the hot sides. In other words, you are stopping that pressure or the back pressure from the cold side, and that will not happen again. The other thing is that cartridge obviously is now messed up. So you have created work for yourself now for future by going to install the box for the balance side. You've already installed a non-return valve, and obviously you're going to have to replace either the mixer or the cartridge. Now, guys, the benefit of this is that you have saved a lot of time, because there was no need for you to go inside the roof. You know that valve works. You can see that from the gauge, and you don't need to replace that. So an inexperienced guy is going to get in the roof. He's going to replace the valve. He's going to go back. Somebody from the office is going to phone him and say to him, Mrs. Jones phoned again. The valve is, or the water is running again. So 2 or 3 times like that, whole day wasted, a lot of money wasted and time. So by using your gauge, you are going to save money for the company and also time. Time you could have spent with other calls that you went to. So in that manner, we can use a pressure gauge. I believe, as I've said initially, it's the way to go. There's no other thing to do. You have to do that. I just want to explain to you that if she asks you why 900, you can say to her, ma'am, that pressure of 900 kPa is based on the premise of 1 meter rise from ground level represents 10 kPa. The reading of 900, if you divide 10 in 900, the answer is going to be 90. So that water source is 90 meters high, vertical height. You remember what I said in the beginning. So guys, that is my story for this morning. I hope you can relate to that, and I hope it's going to be a good day for your plumbing by using your pressure gauges. Thank you very much.